I would like to thank you for inviting me to discuss the origin of the COVID virus, and hope you will allow me a few extra minutes. I'm a science writer, and I've worked on 2 leading research journals, Nature and Science, and then for 30 years on the New York Times, where I was an editorial writer and the science editor. This background has given me some knowledge of how the scientific community works. I'd like to touch on 2 issues of interest to the committee. Where did the SARS-2 virus come from, and why are we taking the lab leak idea seriously only now instead of 3 years ago? When the epidemic first broke out in December 2019, natural origin and lab leak were 2 equally reasonable explanations. But if the virus had emerged naturally, it should have left many telltale signs in the environment. None has yet appeared, despite the Chinese government's keen interest in finding them. As each month passes without such evidence, the natural origins idea has grown steadily weaker, it seems to me. For lab leak, on the other hand, the evidence has been building. Here are two of the 3 strongest pieces of evidence in favor of lab leak. First, the epidemic broke out not in some random Chinese city, but right in Wuhan, home of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. We know that scientists there were genetically engineering coronaviruses under seriously inadequate safety conditions. And we know that viruses escape from labs all the time. Clearly, lab leak has to be a strong possibility. Second, that possibility became much more concrete with the recent surfacing of a grant proposal by the Wuhan researchers and others. They applied in 2018 for a $14 million grant from a Pentagon program called Project Defuse. The essential ingredient of SARS-2, as the chairman has said, one which makes the virus so infective, is a small genetic element called a furin cleavage site. Wuhan researchers said in their grant proposal that they would insert this very element into a group of coronaviruses. And not only would they place they would place the element at a very specific point on the virus's genome called the S1-S2 junction. Now, the DoD turned the proposal down. It was too risky even for them, but the researchers may have done much of the basic work already or could have found other ways to finance it. A year later, the SARS-2 virus appears on the scene, and guess what? It possesses a furin cleavage site, the only known member of its large family of viruses to do so, and the cleavage site is positioned right at the S1-S2 junction. Why should evolution produce at that very time and at that very place a virus of the exact type described in the Defuse proposal? It's surely much easier to believe that the Wuhan researchers did exactly what they proposed and generated the SARS-2 virus in their lab. But if the evidence for lab leak is so strong, why do so many people still believe the virus came from nature? The reason is that the natural origin camp got its story out first, always a big help. It very successfully painted lab leak as a conspiracy theory before anyone had publicly proposed it. The national media swallowed the natural origin story unskeptically, and once committed to it, failed to report important contrary evidence such as the Defuse grant. Science journalists in particular, it seems to me, fell down on their job by failing to check out the virologists' self-serving claims. The natural origin theory did not prevail by accident. It was promoted by science administrators in the United States and England, including Francis Collins and Anthony Fauci of the National Institutes of Health. The NIH is a national treasure, and Collins and Fauci, its most prominent leaders at the time, are well known to the public and on Capitol Hill. It's hard to believe that in the twilight of their long careers, they would seriously mishandle an issue as important as the origin of the COVID virus. Yet that is what the evidence seems to point to. The campaign to discredit lab leak began on the evening of January 31st, 2020, when Fauci received an email from 4 virologists led by Christian Anderson of Scripps Research. They had all concluded that SARS-2, because of its furin cleavage site, could not have been made in nature. Fauci was probably not too pleased to hear that the virus might have escaped from research that his agency had funded. A strange thing happened to the virologist's conclusion. Within 4 days, Anderson, in an email of February 4, repudiated deriding lab leak as a crackpot theory. What made him change his mind? No new scientific evidence about the virus came to light between January 31st and February 4. But from that 180-degree reversal, a whole campaign was able to be developed, including highly influential articles placed in Nature Medicine and the Lancet. I have some ideas about how this and other research should be regulated, which I've described in my written testimony. I'll stop there.